April, the Wuchen month is going to be an interesting month. Okay, if you can see my slides, please give me a 1. Anyone can see my slides? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Boon Leong. Thank you, Jessie, Kenneth, and Mitra. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Sunday morning on our episode 22 of Astrology and Global Trends. And this month, we are going to do the April month forecast, which is a Earth Dragon month, Wu Chen. And this month is also very important. So it's actually month of treading carefully and not to step on the tiger's tail. I will show you why it is named in this way, in correlation with the wisdom of I Ching. Okay. As usual, shall start our talk with the introduction, which I've done, the disclaimer, and then a brief recap of last month, which is March forecast, the influence. Then we shall talk about the influence elements, the influence of 5 elements energy, the forecast of April using astrology. And PC, he will also use his research in global trends to forecast the April's trends as well. And we will make a summary at the end of our talk. Disclaimer here is that the content here is purely based on our study in the global trend related to Chinese astrology and also the research for you to use as a guide in your investment decision. And you should exercise caution in investment, especially in such volatile situation. This year, there are a few months that are even more volatile. Then you will need to do your own research on the company, on the type of investment that you want to invest in. There will not be any stock advice given. Okay. So I do not know if there's anyone that is new to this platform. Basically, actually, we both PC. I saw a few new people here. PC and I I deploy the Chinese astrology method, and PC deploy his trend research to forecast the global trends. So most of the time, 90% of the time, we find that our forecasts are aligned. What I forecasted is manifested or according to his global trends research, that it is also pointing towards that type of forecast. So we have achieved like about 80% of accuracy to help our members in making a profitable investment. Okay. So let's recap on the March energy. The March energy, it was a Ding Mao month. Ding Mao, I think those who gone through my personal financial course and astrology, you will realize that this wood is actually a resource to the fire. So month of March hot or not? Is it very hot, especially in this region? Yes or no? Give me a
Yeah,
H.
we have a lot of heat wave.
Yeah, that's right. So it's very big fire, and plus the wood here also support the fire. So that's why it's a very hot month. In a way, we can use this actually to forecast weather also. Each of the dominant elements, they represent certain components of the weathers. So I
Yeah,
already
just
stated.
to just to interject,
Mm,
I received news that Chiang Mai has forest fire again, you know.
oh, okay. Yeah, this month, this year will be, because the chart here is also, there is also um wood, and I think there is fire somewhere hidden. Okay, so that's why there will be, forest fire also. There will be some, but not so high. I think there will be more of earthquake related, because it's earth, and also the Chengguo is there in the middle. But
Okay.
this one is exceptional, because this one you can see fire very strong. That's why definitely there will be, news reporting of fire also. But generally the whole year, the focus I would think that is more of earth related, like earthquake and all this. So we look at it now. Last month also says that challenges in logistic transportation and also potential political betrayers okay, and industry related to fire are getting more attention because every now and then we have breakthrough, especially with AI emphasis on on consumption for ecological purposes. We shall look at all these things that whether it manifests itself or not in the report.
Yeah, the recent accident at the
Mhm.
Baltimore bridge may seem small when we just glance at it, but the port in Baltimore is where all the big ships uh, uh, go through under the bridge to the port to unload. So that would affect a lot of the businesses in Baltimore, and
Okay.
that include some of the military supply ship. They are there. There's also the so-called unloading of cars that they import, machineries, and also the uranium and other energy sources. So the thing is that they use the port because the only way uh, through the river is through a tunnel. But that
Mm,
tunnel does not allow extra large vehicles to go through. And
mm.
that means that it will create a logistic nightmare in the surrounding region in the US.
Oh, okay. So it correlates with this point, right?
Yeah,
Challenges in
yeah.
logistic and transportation. We see that, okay, because there's no water also, and then the fire also is there, okay, for this month. Okay, so for the advancing of technology, we can see that NVIDIA announced that they have another AI breakthrough, computing chips breakthrough with a platform where they can, accelerate computing with even higher performances at lower consumption rate. So this is related to the ecology point. So if these chips were to be in the market, that means it will also have a breakthrough in the computing side, the computing of uh, the computing of our usage related to the breakthrough in the consumer electronics. Okay.
Yeah, Evelyn, just to share, yeah,
Mm,
there's a recent report that is out that because of AI, there's a overwhelming need for data centers because AI right now has shifted into cloud computing.
mm.
So to get the data center working 24/7, 365, yeah, it will require 500% increase in
Mm,
energy consumption. So
mm.
can you imagine what that will do to the energy resource sector?
Yes, definitely, because this is up in the supply chain. Because normally when when a lot of people they will buy directly into the technology share, but it's just that in here, global trends, we look at, up the supply chain as well. What will be the impact in the this one if you do not want to buy, so much of technology share, or you feel that, the PE ratio is really, really extremely high. So this is another alternative that you can look into. Okay, here the top stories. We also talk about, the breakthrough in Devian. Devian actually is a software engineer. You do not need software engineering if you have Devian AI that can do all these things. So it will also breakthrough in. There's also a breakthrough in software engineering, and also Sora that can, generate videos. This is also open AI. Chat GPT and all this, they all belongs to open AI platforms. So now they are creating Sora as well that can generate video, because we already have open AI that can generate the scripts or the the research, the content, and also the illustration. Now is also video. That means things can move already. Okay, animation.
So another interesting thing is that uh, You can see that US is having a lot of breakthrough in software, yeah. But China is having a lot of breakthrough in the hardware, the AI in manufacturing. So it's just uh, too illogical that both countries cannot work together. Because
Mm,
if one is good at the hardware, one is good at the software, imagine a lot of the brain behind the equipment, then mankind can really progress a lot. We will be forging closer to the age of the solar system.
yeah, that is true. That's true because China does have and they're also trying to break through in terms of software as well. I think Huawei and all these they are trying to look into AI, their own AI as well. You're right. If we can marry these two together, it's a shame that two now is not really working very well together. So next is like we talk about political betrayal. Who betrayed Ukraine? You go and imagine because now Ukraine is like losing the war. So it's also very interesting. Ukraine's war will not really end maybe until 2025, 2026 when the planet the Saturn planet move out of the cluster of the star system. And we know that Saturn is a very slow moving planet. So it takes about 30 years to orbit around the sun. So only at the time it will this one because when the Ukraine one started is when the Saturn moved into the clusters of the star with the conjunction of another two planets together. So this one definitely is another thing that we need to watch out. And also it looks like Russia is winning the war, and it looks like Russia is also going to win the war in the future. I think this aligned to PC's research as well.
Yeah, the thing is that if you want to go through you know, the mainstream media is the last thing you want to read about it. I would suggest you go to websites like on YouTube, like the Duran, uh, uh, Alex Cristoforo, the New Atlas, and of course, Alexander McQuarrie. These are the people who have both sides of the story, from the mainstream as well as from people inside Russia. So they actually scan through all the news channels, yeah, from both sides. So they actually give their opinion and very correctly as well. So you have a better perspective of what's happening. But definitely, there are reports that some of NATO troops are already inside. And yesterday, I saw a news that Poland is mobilizing its military, and some suspect that Poland would enter into Western Ukraine. Western Ukraine used to be a territory that belongs to Poland several hundred years ago.
Yeah, that's right. And also one more interesting part is that there are about 76 countries, almost 50% of I think right now the global has about 200 countries, right? More or less, plus all the small one is about 190 something. And 76 countries is more than 40% that's holding election, which is affecting about 4 billion people around the world. So definitely, if you look at the chart, the party chart that we'll go through this year, the Li Chun chart, is also showing that there will be a lot of changes, right? Because with the two clash and everything, and this is already manifesting itself that never in history, this one, the mainstream report, that never in history that we have so many countries together holding election at the same time. Okay. Yeah. So next is that precious metal also received a lot of attention. Actually, I forecasted that in February, but it only comes in March. Okay. And let's look at the April energy. Malaysia don't have election. I also don't know. Okay, let's look at April's energy. Um, uh, must be careful, April, because we look at the Li Chun chart itself, we already know. Let me move this away. We already know that there is already a heaven and earth clash, and now we are in the dragon month. So the dragon month is a month that definitely you want to watch out for. Besides these two animal sign month, yin is too early because we just started the Li month. But now we are already in the first quarter. I think first quarter almost ended already. And here we have the dragon already comes in. So there will definitely be some quite big changes already. And moreover, there is dragon and dog clash together. There could be big natural disasters. And one side is here. If you look at here, we already says that this is metal. Metal will clash with wood. So if we look at metal, metal comes from west, northwest, right? Represent Western nations. And here is wood. Now wood is east, right? Represent the Eastern nations like China and all these things. So they were, always you did realize. I think you also, if you if you are following our platform and also follow some of the news, you will always realize that US is trying to control here because the metal want to chop the wood ma. But however, because this one happens in the middle, in the month, the wood is very strong. That's why it's also very difficult to chop. No matter how you chop, also they will still, have some challenges to chop the wood this year. Okay? So a lot of people, ask me that US is still very strong. The stock market is doing very well. How could, this is another way of looking at the chart that shows that the prominent force is with China. It's with the Eastern nation. Okay. Besides what the outlooks looks like, then we already talk about, even the stock market is performing very well. Does it really represent the US economy? Does all the stocks perform very well? Or is it just those index one, the Magnificent Seven that is, pulling on the index? That is, you have to look at it. The sample, is it representing the population?
Yeah,
Okay.
and just for information, the number of homeless people in US, yeah, have just reached a record high. So that goes to show even as the stock market is going up, there's a lot of inequality in the US. So that's why the number of homeless people right now have reached a new record high.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this is actually one of the disadvantage of capitalism. When you have capitalism, the rich and the poor gap will be widened one eventually. And also, I think people's emotions are not very stable one because you have dragon and dragon punish. So those who have dragon in the chart also be more careful. Don't make big decision this month. Okay. Next, next we look at also the flying star chart. Now this one is going to be very interesting. Everything will the month and the year stars is all aligned one. Okay, if they are in certain direction, those that know have a bit of knowledge of feng shui, you will know that because each of these stars, if you want to know what each of these stars represent, you can always go to my YouTube channel or my website. I've already explained what they really are. It's also an energy, a force energy, a five element force energy, and each year the star itself will also fly around according to the movement of the planets, movement of the big deeper position and all these things that determine all this. So basically, very simple, compress it into 3 minutes that I want to talk about is that here everything the year we have the year flying star, the month flying star, and here is that they is double whammy. That means the west is not good. Means number five is usually shows not very it is not it is not a good stars. Okay. Normally it's related to something like calamity in the usual case. So five is also in the west, which is more related to the US. And here in the middle here, actually the normal home base are always middle one. The middle palace is always the earth one, the center of the earth. And now today, we have one tree. Tree is actually a movement star. Or in trigram I Ching, we call it 整卦. 整卦 means movement or thunder. So if it moves to the middle to the earth, it could be that the middle core of the earth that potentially there will be earthquake there. Potentially, there will be earthquake somewhere reported. It's not necessarily in this region here, but it's just that if moving in in this direction. If you look at the flying star itself.
Yeah, if we look at the Middle East, the countries that are prone to earthquake is often Iran, Turkey, little bit of Iraq, in those areas. So worthwhile to watch also.
Mm, yes. And also you will realize that those in the middle, the five, is always, a very unstable, it's a very unstable star. That's why Middle East is always becoming like an unstable region. Next is in the month of April, we have hexagram of 10. It's called threading. The pillar of the Wu Chen is actually translated in the hexagram number 10 is threading here. Okay, threading means that if you look at here, it is an image. It's actually an image of the tiger that is sleeping and people are trying to cross. As long as you don't step and awaken the tiger still, that is still okay. Okay, so you have the thread. It's a wisdom or a wise saying that we ourselves to tread very carefully in April. Okay, you can see here the eyes is not awakened, it's still sleeping. Okay, so you have the thread on the tiger's tail with yet purposeful action, balancing the assertiveness and sensitivity to avoid any pitfalls when we progress. And I talk about double punishment also, right? So any decision we want to make, we have to be careful. So in April, the global tensions might require some cautious diplomacy, and prudent in our investment strategy and risk management practices. So, technological advancement could prompt a careful regulation to balance both innovation and ethical consideration, and also environmental forecasts that related to conservation, mitigating the ecological damage, and social trends also, that emphasize on respectful dialogue to navigate the cultural and ideological differences for global harmony. Next is that I want to talk about yesterday, I think during my talk on astrology and personal finance, Esme, I don't know whether Esme is here today or not. So she asked me about solar eclipse, which is a very timely question to ask because on April the 8th, right? April 8th, right? We have total solar eclipse. Of so many eclipse, I think the most, how do you say, the most dangerous one that we will need to look at is total solar eclipse that is visible in America. We already have one in 2007, right? In 2007, you still remember Donald Trump was there watching the eclipse. After that, what happened? What happened in the great election? Yeah, 2017. Then after that,
Uh,
I think 2020 is the great election, right?
yeah,
Yeah. What happened to Donald Trump? Did he win or he lost?
yeah, he won.
He won in
He won
um
against Hillary, ma. I think before that he
he
didn't.
no he lost against Biden in 2020, right?
Oh, 2020. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
in 2020,
yeah.
because the effect of the eclipse is not almost immediate one. It's like 3 years, according to the ancient text, and the sun eclipse, sun normally represents leaders of the nations. Okay,
So
the
that means
king.
Biden will lose.
This one, there are chances that could be major changes. So because we already know that this one is year evaluation hexagram, where I talk about abundance during my annual astrology and global trend talks, that this year's evaluation hexagram is abundance. And abundance, we also need to look at each of these yao, the core, the line itself. And now because each of these line also have some saying one, some forecast saying one, and up to we are now in the third line already, in the month of April till June. The third line actually talks about the sky will be so dark until you can see the little stars. Okay, so it denotes eclipse, and normally eclipse is not a good omen. It's not a good sign. So we have to watch out that events that follow a few months later, especially in November, because November is another yao. I think it's up here or up here. Also, it's not a very good saying. So you can see that we have to watch out for United States president elections. There will be anticipated great changes that will happen, and with a closed door somehow. Okay.
I believe that the polls are indicating that Trump will win now,
Mm,
but uh, the Biden admin is doing everything it can to stop Trump from winning. And you can see by their actions that they are allowing millions of illegal immigrants in. And that is one of the reasons which they want to increase the number of votes against Trump. Now,
okay.
a lot of people are very concerned, even among US political scene watchers, that if Trump loses, then it might ignite a sort of a massive riot, maybe short of a civil war. But it could also mean that some states may want to succeed from the union, especially Texas, which you can also tell that a lot of the Republican states, meanwhile, they are signing legislation to endorse gold as money, gold and silver as money, which means it could also mean that they are making preparation for the worst case scenario.
Mm, yeah. Okay. Okay. So that's why April is going to be quite a so-called an exciting month, because of the clash. Okay, that will manifest when you see the clash animal, already out there. In the chart. So this is all for my sharing and for my part. I'm busy. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Evelyn. So let me share my screen. Okay, just a recap of what happened here. Now, we warned that there's a potential crisis due to the expiration of the BTFP loans, but so far, no major crises have really materialized. And this could be due to the following: the Fed hinting that it will be cutting interest rates, resulting in the outflow of funds from the money market back to the banks. So initially, a lot of the banks were very distressed because of the high interest rates. A lot of the money moved out of the bank deposits into the money market funds. And because the Fed continually said over the last few FOMC meetings that they are going to cut interest rate, then, because a lot of the funds, a lot of money that go into the funds are actually short-term interest rates. So what happened is that people believe that the interest rates will be cut, so there's a gradual outflow from the money market back into the US banks. And the other thing is that the US government continues to pump money into the economy. And between February and March, total US government debt increased by 280 billion to 34.61 trillion. So the US government is loosening up its fiscal policy, okay, putting money in. So even though everyone says that the US economy continue to do well, but it is being pushed by stimulus from the US government. Now, you imagine that now that the US government, US economy is considered strong, but the US government still continue to put in stimulus. Can you imagine what happens when there's a recession? So if a recession happens, like many economists predict, because they see the deteriorating conditions of the US economy. If let's say a recession happens, how many trillions more will they add in? So that's why in another recession, very likely we will see easily between 8 to 10 trillion being pumped into the economy over the next few years. So that could easily mean that by the time that 2025 or 2026, US, if a recession happened during that time, yeah, the US debt will be closer to 45 to 50 trillion. So that is how, and that's also the reason why a lot of people are saying that the US debt is unsustainable. Still, we believe that the banking crisis seems inevitable as the CRE crisis continues to dominate and average home prices have fallen from 490,000 US dollars per home to 401,000, the equivalent of a 19.3% decline. So the thing is that last month when I shared the chart, we are showing that the default rate even among US household is actually increasing. So if the home equity continue to fall, then people will be panicking. Okay, they might want to quickly sell off their home to get back their equity. And the other thing is that nowadays in the CRE market, office buildings are being sold between 50 to 70% discount. And yesterday I received news that Starwood, which owns the Sheraton brand of hotels, actually defaulted a $700 million loan. So what it
Oh,
did is that it decided to forego 3 properties, which means it giving out the 3 properties for free. Okay, so that's how bad it's being, and there's one huge building that is sold for just $1 because the owner wants to get himself out of, you know, just want to discharge all his liabilities, declare bankruptcy rather than having to pay. So that is what is happening. And it's just that a lot of all this is being hidden, okay? Only those economies that are really comb through uh, each and every major seismic shift in the property market, the commercial real estate market, they are able to come up with such reports. Okay, but these are seldom in the headlines. Okay, so March we forecasted that uranium could do well after Kazatomprom, Chemical, and Orano all missed their production targets, but instead uranium saw a correction. So that's why uranium has fallen close to about 20%, and but since then have actually moved up from its bottom. So the thing is that um, there are there are some sellers in the market. Some of it could be due to the one of the Japanese nuclear plant was preparing to start, but then it didn't get the approval to start. So it has to sell back the uranium into the market because there's no point holding to the uranium if let's say you cannot use it. And of course, there are also a number of traders who actually took profit because uranium has gone up almost 100% in the year 2023 till early 2024. So they also would want to take their profit, but some of it could also be in tandem, okay, that the major players like Kazatomprom, Chemical, they are desperate for physical uranium because all their production fell out of target. And if let's say uranium price continue to go up, then they will actually have to fulfill their obligation by buying from the spot market, which will be very expensive for them. Okay, for example, Kazatomprom, they have to use their inventories to meet their obligations. So that actually reduce their inventories by a substantial percentage. So it is in their interest also to try to short the market so that they can buy cheaper. But right now, the correction seems to be over, and recent news suggested that uranium could be going towards 140 to 150 by end of this year. And by next year, it will be closer to $200 per pound. So, but what have we got right? Now, the CRE crisis actually worsened, and on 26 March, S&P Global downgraded its outlooks for regional banks due to their CRE exposures. Now, the rating agency downgraded the outlook for First Commonwealth Financial, M&T Bank, Synovus Bank, Trust Bank, and Valley National Bancorp to negative from stable. This is just outlook, okay, not downgrading their debt. And here's another report, okay, that looming real estate debt crisis puts small banks into troubled status, okay, and according to the Claros Group, they find 282 US banks at risk, okay, and this report is actually on March 20. So Bloomberg also came out with the number of US banks that could be in trouble if, let's say, the CRE market continue to worsen. So that's why inevitably all this is pointing towards a CRE come banking crisis. So we were right in predicting that, you know, there will be profit taking in the S&P in the days leading to the expiration of the BTFP loans, and thereafter stability would return when the threat of a banking crisis subsided. So this is how the S&P did. Now, you remember I say that leading towards the expiration period, which is here, okay, there'll be some profit taking. So there were actually profit taking, but after that, when the coast is clear, you can see the S&P is moving back up again. So we predicted that the US government would reach 34 trillion in debt, okay, but it went higher than that. Right now it's at 34.6, okay. We predicted it will reach 34.5, but right now it exceeded our expectations, okay, at 34.61. So the other thing is that we predicted that gold will also go up higher. Combination of central banks buying, runaway government debt, and potential banking crisis, you know, push up the demand for gold. And gold is now at 224. You know, that was on 28 March. But on 29 March, gold actually reached $2,258. But in Shanghai, on the same day, it reached 2,284. So that means there's still a discrepancy of about $30 or so between the price at the Shanghai Gold Exchange and the COMEX. So on Monday, probably the gold in the Shanghai Gold Exchange will actually move up higher because on the websites of JD.com, gold is being sold at $2,315 per ounce, okay, which is even higher. So, but nevertheless, if you look at it on just the month of March itself, gold has gone up $168.90. Actually, it's much higher than that because it went all the way up to 2,258. So likelihood gold actually went up about 9% for the month of March. So when it comes to Europe, we also write that Europe's economy deterioration to remain in contraction. Okay, Euro area's 2023 GDP growth was just 0.4%, down from 3.4% in 2022. Germany's GDP growth was negative 0.3%, down from 1.4% in 2022. France's GDP growth was 0.9%, down from 2.5% in 2022. Italy's GDP growth was 0.9%, down from 4% in 2022. And UK's GDP growth was 0.1%, down from 4.2% in 2022. So as expected, Europe's trade deficit with China remained high as Europe or EU curbed technology exports to China, even though the deficit actually shrank from 391 billion euro to 291 billion. So export declined 3% to euro 223 billion, while imports fell 18% to euro 514 billion. So this is a very interesting report, okay? And this person, Alicia Gracia, a senior fellow at Brussels-based think tank, Bruegel, argued that the bloc's decrease in export to Beijing was primarily a consequence of the latter's successful implementation of import substitution measures, which are aimed at reducing China's strategic dependence on the West. So um, you cannot say that because China did that, but it was because of the EU which banned the export of important electronics and chip making equipment, okay, to China, that China has been forced to actually look at import substitution. So, this is like a boomerang, okay? The EU did a boomerang on Russia, okay, and it's hitting them back in the energy. And because of uh, the EU is paying a very high price for the LNG from the US. Okay, whereas if they have bought the gas directly from Russia, it is a straight gas pipeline. But if you buy LNG from US, that's a lot of cost because natural gas is a form of vapor. It has to be gasified at near the port, okay? And gasification is you have to degasify, okay, which is a very expensive procedure. Then you have to load it on LNG ships and maintaining, okay, the liquid natural gas is very expensive venture as well. Then that ship have to transit the entire Atlantic Ocean to Europe, where it will be degasified and then put into the pipeline. So they are actually paying a few times higher, okay, whereas they can have cheap energy from Russia. And that's why there's a lot of deindustrialization in Europe because they cannot compete. When energy cost becomes very high, they lost their competitiveness. That is why a lot of the European industries are moving outside. Okay, it also helped the US in a way, okay, because some of them are shifting their operations to the US. So, that Nord Stream pipe discontinuation actually have benefited US quite a lot as well. Okay, so EU's export to China are expected to decline moving forward as China homeshoring intensifies, resulting in the trade deficits remaining high. So on China, China's economy power ahead while inflation remain muted. Later, we'll look at some of the indicators. Its economy continue to attract foreign investment in high-tech manufacturing, and Chinese property market remain in the doldrums. And that is by design, okay? It's not something that suddenly burst. The government has long feel that financialization of assets is not the way to grow the economy. So that is why after subsequent warnings from the government, but the developers choose to continue to sell the idea of real estate investment, the government decided to pull the plug. And that is why a lot of the debt-ridden developers are now, are seeing their capital being wiped out, or some even declared bankruptcy. So in some ways, it is good because a huge portion of the debt that is part of China's total debt are from the real estate. So when they are all in bankruptcy, it's sort of like wipe off that portion of the debt. So we talked about the internationalization of the RMB last month. So the RMB has surpassed the yen for the third consecutive month to become the world's fourth most active currency in January, accounting for 4.51% of global payments, according to data from SWIFT, up from 4.14% in December 2023. But one interesting thing is that it is precisely why the BRIC nations are trading among themselves, because they do not want to have anything to do with SWIFT. So that is why I believe that the transaction of the renminbi in the international scene is actually much higher, because all these transactions bypass SWIFT, because for example, Russia and China transaction, is already a few $100 billion a year, and is 90% using the swap of ruble and renminbi. And not only that, Iran trades with China in renminbi, Pakistan also, and soon we have a big oil exporting countries, the likes of Saudi Arabia and UAE. So UAE has been selling LNG to China in renminbi as well. Yeah. So another thing, we talk about China's technology breakthrough. So as PI, reaffirm our prediction that more breakthroughs will be coming out of China. According to ASPI report released on 2nd March, China has a stunning lead in 37 out of 44 critical and emerging technologies after tracking defense, space, energy, and biotechnology. According to WIPO, or World Intellectual Property Organization, China remains the largest contributor to the Patent Cooperation Treaty for international patents registration. In 2023, there were a total of 69,000 PCT filings from China, among the total number of 272,000, accounting for about 25%. Though a small decrease of 0.6% from 2022, China continued to be the top origin of PCT applications. US came in second at 55,600 applications, representing a 5.3% drop year on year. So we also talk about Chinese citizens increasing their gold purchases, which have continued unabated as gold hit record high. But Gainesville Coins actually came out with some very interesting chart, and goes to show, okay, what the PBOC is doing that is more interesting. So here, it shows that even though the PBOC reported that they are buying gold in rate, but WGC, the World Gold Council, estimated buying, okay, reported and unreported, as being much, much higher than reported. Okay, so the estimated PBOC gold holdings in terms of metric tons is in fact double of what they are currently reporting. So Yuan Hu, very difficult to pronounce his name, Yuan Hui, suggested that the PBOC and the Chinese private sector have been the driving forces behind gold price appreciation. So, a lot of people try to talk about gold in the context of investment or trading, but they actually, majority of them discounted the influence of BRICS. They see it in that it is being driven based on of what investors believe are happening in the US. Okay, it goes to show that a lot of investors or a lot of analysts in the US have not truly paid attention to what BRICS can do. So let's look at the US economic indicators. CPI was up 3% month on month in February. Year on year, it grew 3.2%, up from 3.1% in January. Core CPI was 0.4% in February. Year on year, it grew 3.8%, but down from 3.9% in January. The PPI was 0.6% in February. And year on year, it gained 1.6%, up from 0.9% in January. So normally, once the PPI starts to increase, that means the cost of manufacturing goods have actually increased. And that could translate to higher inflation down the road. Okay, it's either higher inflation or shrinkflation, which means prices remain the same, but the quantity of that good is reduced. So retail sales came in at 0.6% month on month in February. Year on year, it gained 1.5%, but net retail sales less CPI was negative 1.7%. Industrial production rose 0.1% month on month in January. Sorry, it's February. But fell negative 0.23% year on year. The NAHB, which is the real estate indicator, came in at 51 in March, up from 48, signaling there's some expansion. Housing starts rose 10.7% in February, while housing permits rose 1.5%. So you can see that whenever this NAHB index inch up, then housing starts and housing permits normally do rise in tandem. Okay, but there may be some volatility in between, but the general trend, okay, would lean towards being in tandem. So existing home sales rose 9.5% in February, but year on year it fell 3.3%. Preliminary PMI manufacturing came in at 52.5 in March, while PMI for services came in at 51.7, indicating there's expansion. So you can see that the US economy is a bag of mixed goods. Yeah. Certain sectors see contraction, certain sectors see expansion. But what is important is that the retail sales is the most important for the US because it consists of up to 70% of its GDP. So if let's say retail sales is down, okay, or increase very slightly once they build in the price deflator, then the net impact on the GDP could be negative. So very importantly, where the US is concerned is always on the retail sales. So the leading economic indicators after 23 consecutive negative monthly changes, the US Conference Board leading economic indicators posted its first positive month gain in 2 years. However, the gain is minor when measured against previous gains, indicating that the risk remains that it could turn negative in the coming month. You can see that previous positive signs were actually much stronger bars, but here is a very slight increase. So it could easily mean it will take a downward trend again, downward track again, or unless it's strengthened with another stronger bar. So the LEI needs to sustain its possible momentum to convince economies that the US economy finally is out of the woods. Rising inflation could hamper its progress. So let's look at why there is inflation in the US. So we have always cautioned that inflation will return and remain lofty because of the uncontrollable spending by the US government, defeating the Fed's objective of reining in inflation back to 2%. The Treasury Department received $271 billion in receipts, but outlays total $567 billion, resulting in a deficit of $296 billion. Now, this is the reason why the Fed is losing its fight against inflation. Therefore, it is not surprising that US government debt is increasing by 1 trillion every 100 days. Now, this is based on the Bank of America report. Okay, they have tracked the incremental rise in the US debt, government debt, and they've come to the conclusion that over the past 3 quarters, it is like 1 trillion every 100 days. So the deficit, of course, need to finance through debt, and that means money printing. So as long as money printing continues, okay, there will be inflation because the US cannot afford to cut its spending. You know, Social Security is like an empty shell. Every payment has to be financed by debt. Okay, then you look at the national defense, which has a huge portion, and interest. You know, previously, national defense is the major budget, is the major spending factor in the US budget, okay, accounting for about 800 over billion, 900 billion. But right now, interest on US debt is more than 1 trillion. It has become bigger than national defense. Of course, Social Security and Medicaid, they are also very high. Okay, they are in the trillions a year. So the other thing to look out for is agricultural inflation. So commodities are making a comeback, especially agriculture-based commodities. Therefore, food inflation will exert itself once again. So what we are looking at is that, everyone has seen the price of cocoa. Cocoa actually behave like Bitcoin. Okay, right now 1 ton of cocoa is worth more than 1 ton of copper. Okay, copper still I think is hovering around about $7,000 per ton, but cocoa is $10,000 per ton. Okay, and then we have orange juice, we have reached record high. We have olive oil that have reached record high. So all these are happening in the agricultural sector. And
We talk about that also, right? We forecasted that this year the food price will go up.
yes, so those of you who are ardent consumer of chocolate, you could be paying much higher price, or you could be paying the same price, but you have more palm oil and less chocolate in the chocolate bar. So it's just like Nutella, okay? I used to like Nutella, but after I see the combination, I decided to give up on Nutella because it's only 25%, okay, that is 20 or 25% that's actually cocoa. Okay, more than half is actually palm oil. So I gave up on Nutella. So WTI crude has also bounced back above $80 per barrel. I think it's closer to 82. And energy is the center of all economic activities. Okay, if let's say crude oil goes up, then that means manufacturing activities will be more costly. And that means the PPI would likely increase in will also increase, okay, going down the road. So logistic costs have increased due to the conflict in the Middle East, but logistic costs in the US may increase as well because of what's happening at the Baltimore port. So sanctions have also caused imbalances in the global supply chain. Now, the dark side of inflation, you can see that the annualized inflation, if we want to compare during the early years, okay, before up to 2018, it's just 1.9%. But between 2019 to 2022, it is 5.57% annualized. That is why people say that when you track inflation month on month, sometimes it goes down against the previous month. Then people say, why the food cost is not increasing. But because if you look at it on a longer term chart, okay, from where it was 6 years ago, it has actually gone up by more than 7%. But of course, this 7% is based on the Federal Reserve CPI. I've watched video of people on Twitter that complains that food costs in the US have gone up about 30%. Okay, so that is how sometimes the government shift the goalposts to reflect lower inflation. So average food at home cost 21.07, but average hourly earnings of the non-supervisor category, which means the very basic employee, cost is 18.08. So 08. So there is a gap of 2.988. So that means that the average hourly earnings is insufficient to meet the increase in the average food at home cost. And that is why you see more and more people consuming their savings to meet their livelihood or incur very high credit card debt, okay, to sustain their livelihood. In fact, credit card debt has gone almost on a record high basis every month when the report comes out. So here you can see that personal savings has collapsed to 3.8% from its peak of 32% from the COVID stimulus, from here all the way to here. And interesting thing, people like to talk about the Magnificent Seven, but this is based on a year-to-date performance of Apple, where it has gone down by 7.63%. Now, Apple is losing market share in China. Huawei has regained its top position, and Apple has ceased to be the innovative company that it used to be uh, compared to the time of Steve Jobs. Okay, so right now, Apple is just increasing the memory or increasing a little bit of features. Okay, and you know it is not it is getting more and it is getting less and less competitive versus the like of Huawei. For example, Huawei right now can actually have direct satellite communication link. Okay, whereas I think Apple is just on the stage of texting, okay, using satellite link. So um, a lot of the uh, things that are happening to mobile phone companies like Huawei already have their own EVs, and Xiaomi also launched their EVs yesterday. I posted the some of the news from the sector, to our members Telegram channel, and it's like they have sold out their entire year supply, okay, in just 36 hours. So, but Apple gave up its EV program after they spent billions and billions of dollars. So this is an indication that Apple is not becoming a technology company. Rather, a lot of fund managers right now, um, in a tongue-in-cheek manner, is saying that Apple is moving towards being a fund manager, because whatever they do is financialization, okay, of its assets. Okay. And the other thing is that Tesla year to date has dropped 29.24%. Tesla is uh, increasing its discounts, okay, because it is fighting against BYD. So there's a video about 10 years ago. Elon was laughing when BYD introduced their first EV. So he was saying that there's no way China can meet the standards of Tesla. Okay, so 10 years later, right now, BYD is the world leading exporter of EVs, beating Tesla. And the other thing is that a lot of people, especially the Chinese, who are very into the EVs and NEVs, they are commenting that Tesla, in terms of technology, is behind a number of prominent names in China. First and foremost is that uh, Tesla users very much continue to use the assisted, um, the automated driving assisted system, or ADAS. Okay, whereas BYD, Xiaomi, and Huawei, they are using uh, ADAS plus LiDAR. LiDAR is using laser technology, okay, to better negotiate uh, the for better negotiation for the autonomous driving experience. So that is why um, there are signs showing there are weakness in the Magnificent Seven. And if let's say this two starts to trend lower, then we are left with the Magnificent Five. Okay, so that is a that is something that you should be aware as well. It's not like because some are good for the past 20 years, it can remain there. For example, if you look back the original Dow 30, I think there's only one or two companies that are still in the Dow 30. So another thing, okay, according to JP Morgan, the stock market is showing signs of frothing. Um, so JP Morgan says the crowded stocks sound risk of out of the blue shock. So sometimes we can take whatever investment bank says with a pinch of salt. Sometimes it's because they want to enter into the rally, and then they spin negative news about the market. And when the market sell off, that's when they go in and then they start to pump higher. Okay, it's the same everywhere. Okay, but then we have to take into consideration that although that might be the intention, but then there are underlying risks such as resurging inflation, worsening crisis in the Middle East, expansion of the war in Ukraine, in the aftermath of the terrorist attack in Moscow, could result in a risk-off event and see the stock market tumble. Now, this is the time that investors need to negotiate the risk diligently. So the stock market tumble, a lot of people say that there's going to be a flash crash, but I think there could be a gradual decline because um, there will always be buy the dip people, okay, because they still believe that the market will continue to go up higher, so they will buy, but then it will trend lower. So there won't be a very huge crash the way I anticipate it, but there will be, you know, a lot of gradual selling whenever it spike up, so that over the longer term, you will see that the market has actually uh, came down somewhat. Okay, and this is according to a well-known momentum analyst, Michael Oliver. You can see some of his videos on YouTube. He actually gives some very good prediction. Okay, using his MSA software. So he also shares some of his prediction, and he has been in the market very, very long, okay, since the 1990s. So a lot of people have credited him for anticipating, for example, what happened to Bitcoin, what happened to silver, what happened to gold over the years. So what could happen in the month of April? The US consumer will face difficulty in sustaining their livelihoods amid inflation's resurgence, rising interest payment of debt, okay? And um, you can see the chart that I posted in the month of March, okay? That shows that they are increasing their payment, their interest payment, okay? So amid record household debt, falling home equity, etc. Now this could result in an increase in consumer default and a weakened consumption. So US Q1 GDP could be below expectations because it's primarily driven by consumption. Atlanta Fed's GDP now is at 2.1%. CRE crisis will continue to worsen as more properties are sold at more than 50% below their purchase price. Signs of distress among regional banks is to be expected. US debt auction could see many abstaining Uh, as central banks and investors shy away, US government debt has become uninvestable. The Fed may be left with little choice and become a buyer of last resort. And Yellen's trip to China reveals the urgency of it. Okay, so you can see that Yellen had flown several times to China. Okay, every time it's like asking China, please buy our debt. Okay, but China is going to entertain slightly. For example, after the meeting in San Francisco with Biden, China actually bought US debt for 2 consecutive months. But the following month after the last two, they actually started selling again. So there's no way that China will continue to bring its holding of US debt back to more than 1 trillion, 1.3 trillion at some time um, that they reached many years ago. Because if any situation of military conflict breaks out between China and US can actually forfeit, okay, that 1 over trillion of debt. So China is also trying to negotiate a bit of PR here, okay, but then each time China buying US debt would come with a lot of demands. Okay, especially right now that the US have even sanctioned personnel from servicing machines that have been sold to China last year. Okay, they are now asking SML not to service, okay, not to sell any parts. So inflation will remain high, and this would put the Fed in a conundrum, whether increase interest rates to curb inflation by putting the US government on course to a default, or become the buyer of last resort, which will spur inflation higher. Fed may shift the goalposts and announce that inflation is under control and then start cutting rates. So this is the likely scenario painted by a number of economists because they say that the US current debt trajectory makes it impossible for them to continue paying the interest on debt because from hundreds of billions right now, we are talking about more than $1 trillion. In fact, based on the kind of deficit that the US government will incur in 2024 will likely result in the interest payment on debt reaching about 1.6 trillion to 1.8 trillion based on the current interest rate. So the Fed is actually between a rock and a hard place. So the accident involving the bridge of Baltimore could have reverberating impact on the US economy, and we are just starting to hear news of it. Okay, gold will likely continue its upward trend due to inherent geopolitical, financial, and economic risks. Indications are the COMEX has lost its control over the price of gold. So Europe economic indicators, Europe area 2023 growth, I already mentioned. Okay, but just to recap, the four major economies in Europe saw a downturn in GDP growth versus a year ago. Euro area CPI came in at 2.6% year-on-year in February, down from 2.8% in January. So the EU is seeing a gradual decline in inflation. In fact, as the report came out yesterday that one or two countries are seeing lower inflation. But what comes next is that Putin have announced that Russia should cut down its oil production to 9 billion barrels of oil per day. Okay, that is a substantial cut, and therefore we could see energy prices spiking again globally, and that means that Europe will see an increase in inflation moving forward. So UK CPI came in at 3.4% in February, down from 4% in January. Euro area retail sales came in at just 0.1% January, up from negative 0.6% in January. But if we look at it, that 0.1%, sorry, this is February. So if just increase 0.1%, but then you look at its inflation is at 2.6%. So that means its real retail sales is actually negative 2.5%. And UK retail sales came in at negative 0.4% in February, down from 0.5% in January. So if we add in, okay, that means that its real retail sales is down 3.8%. And interestingly enough, a recent survey has put the number of persons in poverty in the UK is right now at 12 million. And if you look at UK's population of tens of millions, that is a substantial percentage of its population. So imagine a first world country, the UK, okay, is having double-digit of percentage of people in the poverty line. Okay, that's how bad the UK has deteriorated, and it will continue to spread across Europe and in the US as well, where just now I mentioned that the number of homeless people in the US have reached a new record high. So overall consumption in the Euro area and UK remain weak. So German manufacturing PMI came in at 41.6 in March versus 42.5 in February, while services PMI came in at 49.8 versus 48.3 a month ago. France manufacturing PMI came in at 45.8 in March versus 47.1 in February, while services PMI came in at 47.8 versus 48.4 a month ago. So that leads to someone to comment that although everyone's focus is on Germany, but France is actually showing some precarious sign, okay, of trouble, because France debt is actually much higher. Debt as a percentage of GDP is much higher than Germany, okay, and its economy is showing more contraction, okay, when compared to Germany. So again, France have lost a lot of its power over its former colonies. Okay, for example, a lot of the Western African nations used to be colonies of France, even though they achieved independence they cannot decide on their monetary policy. It is France that decides for them. Okay, that is how France continue to control those independent colonies. So a lot of the, for example, the printing of money and such is controlled by France. So therefore, that is why you see a lot of coup in the Western African nations, and they are renouncing, okay, their uh, their servitude, okay, to France, and that is why uh, Western Africa could see a lot of coup and a lot of political shift, mainly because France have lost a source of cheap resources from the Western African nations. So UK manufacturing PMI came in at 49.9 in March versus 47.5 in February, while services came in at 53.4 versus 53.8 a month ago. So despite the UK um, facing a lot of challenges, okay, it's still struggling where its economy is concerned. But then, as I say, there's a lot of although there is signs that they is not too bad, but because of the inequality in a lot of the Western economies, you see that there's a widening number of people that are very disenfranchised. So the weak manufacturing is the result of both the Euro area and UK sanctioning themselves against uh, cheap energy uh, sources in Russia and decoupling from China, which forced China to expedite its own rapid deindustrialization, especially in high-tech manufacturing. This effectively reduces China imports from the Euro area and UK, and that is why, you know, it will when Europe and UK export less to China, then that means that the economy will lose its major source of income as well. So, of course, farmer protests, we have been long talking about it. We predicted that it will continue in March. Okay, and looks likely it will continue in April as well. Okay, here you can see that right now, from just protesting, right now they are dumping manure on governments, on the parliament grounds and such. So what will happen to Europe in April? Europe will continue to be engulfed in an economic malaise. Continued farmer protests across Europe area will push food inflation higher. Consumption will continue to decline and PMIs for manufacturing will stay in contraction. The UK will continue to deteriorate as 12 million people are now classified as living in poverty. More cities will face bankruptcy. In fact, a number of cities in UK have already declared bankruptcy, okay, such as Birmingham. So you can see that all the football clubs, they say they transfer here, transfer there, costing millions, yeah, but then the city can be bankrupt, okay? So what happened is that when a city is bankrupt, what will happen? They would reduce the services to the people because they got no means to finance. So that means that garbage remains uncollected, okay? Security for the people is lesser because they cannot fund the police. So a lot of social issues will continue to seep in. And what will happen when all these public services are withdrawn or reduced from servicing the public? Crime actually increases. Okay, that means that some cities will become very dystopian. So France, with its immense debt and loss of influence in key African states, which have been its source of important resources, could see economic and financial deterioration. I expect to see more political rallies against the ruling government as food inflation takes hold, and changes in leadership may become inevitable in the long term because, as Evelyn say, a lot of countries are facing elections. Okay, more anti-China narratives are coming out of Europe. Right now, we have a lot of Chinese spying machines like coffee machine, Chinese cranes, Chinese EVs can actually be shut down and cause a traffic havoc. and China could be behind, the ship accident at the Baltimore Bridge because China can have remote access to take control of the boat. Okay. But then people say that the ship is from Singapore. Then they say Singapore is part of China. Okay. Because the TikTok CEO is from Singapore. And after they saying if the ship is from Singapore, then the captain must be from China. No, the captain is from Ukraine. Okay, then the crew must be from China. No, the crew is from India. Okay, then the goods must be from China. So that's how crazy it has been. Okay, coffee machine will spy on you. Okay, washing machine will spy on you. So to drive that narrative is like shooting themselves in the foot because right now they are putting themselves away from cheap and affordable goods. Okay, so Europe may be drawn into a direct conflict with Russia because there are talks that France will send their troops to Russia, and Poland may also send their troops into Ukraine, and Poland may send their troops into Ukraine as well. So that's why things were likely to heat up. Okay, in from April onwards. So let's look at China. CPI was up 0.7% year on year in February and up from 0.8%, negative 0.8% in January. Month on month, it edged up 0.7% a month ago. Remember, everyone was saying that China is in a deflation. Okay, so right now CPI has gone up. So core CPI came in at 1.2% year on year in February, up from 0.4% in January. So likelihood the first 2 months, the CPI was up because there were a lot of demand for goods because of the Chinese New Year celebrations. Okay, so PPI came in at negative 2.7% year on year in January, February, down from negative 2.5% in January. So goods still, the materials to produce goods are still going down, okay, in China. But retail sales climbed 5.5% year on year in the first 2 months of 2024. So you can see that the economy in China, is still thriving. Okay, industrial production went up 7% year on year in the first 2 months of 2024. Remember just now, US industrial production was actually 0 point something percent. So service sector production index up 5.8% year on year in the first 2 months of 2024. Fixed asset investment went up 4.2% with the first 2 months. Manufacturing investment rose 9.4%, while infrastructure investment rose 6.3%. So there's a lot of money that's going into high-tech manufacturing. And as we mentioned a few months ago, that China is reducing the influence of real estate on its economy. At one time, it consists of 30 over percent. I think right now has fallen below 20%, if I'm not wrong. Whereas manufacturing has escalated on the upside because real estate is a financialization of an asset. Manufacturing is the continual production of goods, okay, that allow consumption to be managed at a low price. So that is why China is focusing on manufacturing so that it keeps the prices low, okay, and also makes it competitive to export. So investment in property development is down 9% year on year to 1.1 trillion renminbi in the first 2 months of 2024. That is why a lot of Chinese who actually wanted to buy real estate are actually decided not to buy, okay, because they don't see the appreciation in price, which actually could be beneficial to the overall citizens because marriage in China actually increased by 12% last year. And one of the conditions for marriage is actually to be able to afford a home. So you can see that this policy is gradually making its meeting some of China's concern, especially with demographic, falling marriages, and all those, and raising a family. So that is why sometimes China does things you need not. If you see on a one line trajectory, on a one line objective, then it can be uh, too naive. Okay, that's why sometimes you have to go deeper into it. A lot of the policies that China implemented over the past few years, especially curb on gaming, bringing the real estate down, uh, cutting uh, uh, cutting away tuition companies that uses free government syllabus to enrich themselves. All these are aimed to make it very low cost to raise a family. Okay, so it also forced those tuition centers to change. So previously they thrive on using free syllabus from the government to charge high tuition fees. Right now, they are converting themselves into enriching the child's knowledge. For example, whether in music or in so-called cooking, in arts and such. So that is why, rather than just harping on education, getting good grades, now is these tuition centers are also enriching the children's experience. Okay, so the survey urban unemployment rate stood at 5.3% in the first 2 months of 2024. So Chinese economy continues to thrive, and we can see it in some of the other indicators. For example, China fiscal revenue, although fell 2.3% year on year, in the first 2 months, it rose 2.5% after adjusting on a comparable basis. So China electricity consumption climbed 11% year on year to 1.53 trillion kilowatts hours in the first 2 months of 2024. So power consumption by primary and secondary industry went up 11.1 and 9.7% year on year, respectively. But what is interesting is that power used by tertiary sector soared 15.7%, while residential power use registered 10.5%. What can we tell from this? Now, tertiary sector means they are not the primary or secondary industry, and very likelihood it is the lower end of the industry. So that means that China's rural revitalization is gaining track, okay, because that's where most of the tertiary industries are located. And China is helping them to make their operation more efficient, okay, and that is why you can see the increase in the tertiary sector. And the increase in EVs sales in China have also resulted in higher use of residential power because they still need to charge their cars. So the increase in power use signify a rapid transition into the digital economy and increase the use of electrified motor vehicles, thus accounting for significant increase in residential power use. And China's high-tech manufacturing, sales of Chinese brand passenger vehicles saw 26.7% year on year in the first 2 months of 2024 to 2.07 million units. Market share of domestic brand passenger vehicles rose 7.6 percentage points to 59.9%. Now, there was a time when the likes of Volkswagen, Mercedes, BMW, Audi, GM Motors ruled the streets in China. But right now, all these companies are losing their market share. So much so that some of the European brands like Mercedes, if I recall, and BMW, they have to work with Chinese partners to expedite their transition into EVs. So one interesting story cropped up in Germany. The distributor of Volkswagen decided to import Volkswagen EVs from China, which is very much cheaper. But then it got found out, and then that distributor was fined severely. Okay, that means that EVs made in Europe are not competitive when measured against Chinese EVs. So even there's a lot of reports that says that US will impose heavy tariff on Chinese vehicles. So just like Trump, he's saying he's going to impose 100% on EVs. Either that or Chinese bring their EV technology to US and hire American workers to build the EVs. So um, it's not as simple as that. Okay, first of all, Chinese EVs when they come to US, they are not going to employ a lot of American workers because all of them are fully automated. Okay, they are using robots for most of their manufacturing. Okay, so
Mm.
it's not like it's going to hire a lot of people. But
Yeah.
the thing
And
is that,
also, if you
yeah,
hire American, there will be unions, very strong unions
yes,
from them.
yes, yes.
Yes.
Like right now, Samsung and Hynix, they have decided to stop uh their construction of their uh,
Plan.
plant in the US, TSMC as well,
Mm.
because they cannot get the workers. Okay, and the construction cost is so expensive, so they actually have delayed their works, and that is why there's so many things like the Baltimore Bridge here. It is now projected it will take 10 years to rebuild. 10 years. There was a bridge in Guangzhou, I think, that was hit, and in the next 7 days, they built an alternate,
Yeah.
a temporary bridge.
I'm
So,
not surprised. Like
so
in
that's the
COVID,
difference.
China also
Yeah,
built hospitals very fast, right? They
yeah,
can build things like within 1 month.
yeah. So that is why, there is no way that, it can be that simple. Okay. So China's automobile export jumped 30.5% year on year in the first 2 months of 2024. A total of 822,000 vehicles were exported during the period. Export of passenger vehicles saw 31.5% to 686,000, and export of commercial vehicles total 136,000 units, rising 25.9%. Now, commercial vehicles most popular are the buses. Okay, China also exported 182,000 NEVs during the period, up 7.5% year on year. So the other thing is that China's installed capacity of power batteries went up in the first 2 months of the year. Total installed capacity of the batteries stood at 50.3 gigawatt hour, up 32%. The export of power batteries came in at 16.3 gigawatt hour, down 1.9%. That's all these slight downwards uh, figures is because it's like between January and February is like um, 1/3 of it actually were on holiday. So the NEV sector maintained high growth momentum as output reached 1.25 million units, climbing 28.2% year on year. Sales of NEVs rose 29.4% year on year to 1.21 million units. Now, China has actually introduced a policy that would eventually escalate, okay, the removal of ICE from the streets. Um, right now, they province by province they are implementing that policy so that China want to push the ICE out of the um, out of um, uh, the out of the so-called roads, okay? Because um, they want to achieve faster transition towards net carbon zero. So that means that the likes of Toyota, the likes of Honda, the likes of GM, uh, and European car manufacturers will be badly hit. Okay, European cars, they might be able to still be there because they are aligning themselves with Chinese batteries and EVs manufacturer. Okay, for example, I think it was Mercedes that bought a substantial stake in one of China's EV companies. But I think the Chinese EV companies is too uh, saturated. There's a lot of newcomers keep on losing money. So like among so many, uh, NIO is very popular, but NIO is losing a lot of money every year. I think Xpeng may just slightly be making some money. Li Auto is doing quite well. Okay, and Geely is trying to catch up, okay? And Geely need to catch up because China is pushing out the ICE. So that is why I think companies like BYD will continue to be very strong because they not only have the, the EV sales, but they have the entire battery
Battery,
supply
yeah,
chain.
that's
Yeah.
right.
So that's why Huawei can thrive because Huawei need not rely on the EV as a source of revenue. Therefore, they can throw a lot of money in research, okay, and aligning themselves with companies that manufacture batteries to make their vehicle even better. And that's why Huawei EV is quite successful. And Xiaomi is also another one. They no need to rely on EV as its source of profit. No, EV is a venture which they want to expand their revenue source. They already have a very huge revenue source. Okay, for example, Xiaomi's whole year net profit is actually increased by 600%. So they don't require EV to sustain themselves. They can throw a lot of money into EV and capture the market. That is why I see at some point in time, a number of companies in China will actually be absorbed in or they fail eventually. And there will be
Yeah.
remaining few top brands in China.
There will be merger and acquisition as well in that
Yes,
sector. Yeah.
yes, because it's too saturated. And
Mm,
only those companies with a strong uh, background
mm,
of revenue and profit that they are able to throw the money in. You know,
mm.
CATL is very smart. CATL say you just take my battery. I'm not going to build any
Yeah.
EVs.
Because
Okay.
that's a specialization. This is how they are, they come into the picture. This is the main bread and butter, and they will stick to it one.
Yes. So that is why a lot of companies want to start up, for example, the failed company Evergrande. Evergrande actually have a company that says it's in the EV. Okay, a lot of people invested billions of dollars in it, but it has never produced a single EV. Okay. So that's how it is. Um, but another news that came out this morning was that China now account for more than 50% of ships, new orders and existing orders in terms of construction. So shipbuilding in China, is second to none. Okay, when they want to compare, U.S. shipbuilding and China shipbuilding, the ratio is 200 to 1. So that's the big difference. So now
Mm,
let's talk about this interesting subject in that the PBOC to start buying government bonds. Okay, President Xi told the PBOC to start buying Chinese government bonds, and this report was out on Thursday. Now there are some wide ramifications with this move because the PBOC have not bought any government bonds for many years because they fear of escalating speculation. Also, China's economy has been resilient and does not need any major stimulus. But why do it? For domestic reasons, weaken the RMB to spur economic activities to boost the export market. While those in the high-tech manufacturing have thrived, those in the goods manufacturing sector have not performed well. If I've met with a number of people and they told me that, because they have manufacturing brands from China. They say that it's quite bad because they have lost the export market. Uh, Not lost the export market. Their export of goods to the West has been badly hit.
reduce. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing is that those economies are actually not doing well. Okay. Second thing because of the anti-China narrative. So a lot of them, you know, uh, did not want to import as much as before because of the underlying sentiment. So I believe that uh, the intention is to weaken the RMB, okay, to make their goods affordable so that even those that is quite resistant will say, hey, let's buy them because it's cheap. And then another thing, the Japanese yen has weakened very much, and China is in competition with Japan when it comes to export of certain high-tech products, okay, especially electronics. So that is one of the reasons. And Chinese citizens have a record of 19.8 trillion in savings. Now, one or 2 years ago, it was a record at 18 trillion. Right now, you can see that it is up about 1/3 trillion. Now that goes to show how much the citizens are saving from buying the real estate because they believe that the real estate and they listen to the government, okay, because houses are for living, not for speculation. That is the tagline that the government has told the people. So they realize that it's no longer a money making machine. So they actually save their money, and that is why the government may want to tap on their savings to boost the economy. So how does this work? PBOC bond buying will create demand for government bonds, which provide the opportunity for the citizens to invest. Now, unlike the US bond bull market, interest rate was close to zero. The current bonds from China actually earns an interest. Okay, so that creates a demand for bonds for the citizens to invest. So because the government is buying bonds, it creates a very positive investable environment. So this could eventually lead to boosting the stock market. I doubt that the intention, okay, is just to make their export cheaper, and that could be one of the reasons to boost the stock market as well. Now, the other thing is that the weakened RMB would also spur the purchase of safe haven assets like gold and silver. And gold and silver is sold at a high premium over spot in China. So while investing in government bonds or precious metals, the money will flow back to the government because you have to know that the SGE control it is a physical gold market and the SGE is an SOE. So this allowed the government to utilize the money to rescue distressed local government which have gone under due to the real estate implosion. Now, there are a number of local governments in certain provinces that are in trouble. Okay, so I think this is one of the reasons to tap on the savings, okay, and then uh, help some of the local government rescue them from their distress. So in other words, it's a bailout. Okay. So but then it's done in a in a manner, okay, that will try to kill several birds with one stone. And for geopolitical reasons, China could be targeting the US banks which control the COMEX. Now, if China could ignite a frenzy buying for gold and silver, the banks which run the COMEX could be in trouble as they are facing more than $30 billion in paper loss in their net short position in gold and more than 2 billion in paper loss in their net short position in silver. China may finally want to wrest control of the gold and silver market from the US banks. In the financial world, there's always an old saying, he who owns the gold makes the rules. Why is China in such a hurry to corner the gold market? It may have something to do with the BRICS Plus plan to implement a gold-backed trade for commodities where transactions are done in local currencies, but settlement will be in gold periodically. So therefore, countries need to hold gold. Those that have deficits will need to buy gold to trade, and those who have surpluses will convert to gold as reserves. Now, the other thing is that if China has an abundance of gold, it can even lead to those who wants to trade. Okay, so it's just that you have to repay them in gold. Okay, plus interest. So incidentally, HSBC just launched its gold digital token in Hong Kong. However, it's not redeemable for physical gold, but meets the Basel Rule 3. Ratio of 1.1. So Basel Rule has called the NSFR rule, which states that every digitized or paper gold that you sell have to 1 ounce of paper gold or digital token that you sell needs to be matched by 1 ounce of physical gold. So that ratio must always be maintained 1:1. So here, if you look at it, Hong Kong is selling a digital gold, but it's not redeemable for physical. HSBC. So that means that HSBC wants to hoard gold, It wants to sell this to get the money to hoard physical gold. Why is that? Okay. So that is really telling you that there is a trend that is an unannounced trend, you can say, okay, that is telling a future event. Now, just last week, IMF released a booklet to tell fund managers how to manage gold assets. So IMF has issued that booklet. So it goes, these are the signs that you need to look out for, okay? That is telling you there is a shift to gold because global debt has become unsustainable. How it will materialize, no one knows, but there seems to be some urgency, okay, in trying to secure as much gold as possible. Then the oil and gold trade. Now, this is my own conclusion, but is a lot of the ideas was first invoked by Luke Broman from FFTT, Forest from the Trees, who first invoked the idea of the gold for oil trade. So credit to him. Okay. So if the RMB weakens, demand for gold will increase. Because China sells gold at a premium over spot, this inevitably leads to higher gold price in terms of US dollar. Now, this provides the excellent arbitrage to move gold from the west to the east. Because as I mentioned just now, the Chinese are selling at about $30 premium versus the US price. So China is leading the physical gold market, whereas the paper gold market is highly leveraged. There are about 200 ounce of paper gold to 1 ounce of physical gold in the COMEX. Therefore, it is not surprising that the bullion banks could be forced to give up their price manipulation, just like the London Gold Pool did in the late 1960s before Nixon removed the gold standard in 1971. So you can see that the record of controlling the price of gold has been going on for almost 50 years. Okay, and a high gold price would mean lesser gold per barrel of oil. So China is a major oil consumer, and it makes sense that China spend as little gold as possible on oil. In such a situation, the RMB will not be a global reserve currency. It will just be like any other currencies. It's just a medium of transactions because according to the BRICS, that settlement of differences will be made in gold. We all know that QE means printing money. So this is a question that I do ponder myself. Could the PBOC be printing money to expedite the purchase of gold or other raw materials in view of the heightening global tension and multiple hybrid wars in the horizon? Because previously, China has not China has not done any QE for more than 20 years. But right now, it seems it wants to do. Okay, and China is fast cornering the copper market. For example, I think I sent it to the members on Telegram, a chart showing that how steep China's hoarding of copper have risen. Okay, so that means that China could be expecting some major event in the future. I sometimes do wonder whether the Chinese government behave like the ancient government of old, where they ask astrologers and all those to predict the future.
That is, I would think there is some logic behind it. That they know of period 9 and they seems to know what they are doing as well to align with the period 9 energy.
So that is why I think that QE could also means, because QE means printing money, okay, but instead of printing money to come into the financial sector, it is printing money to absorb as much raw materials as possible before a certain event. Now, let's say something bad happens to the US. That could trigger in November, that could trigger a major escalation of events around the world. Okay, and if you have all the raw materials, you can just continue producing, or selling without real repercussions eating into the overall economy. So I often ponder whether this is something that they have foresight on.
Mm.
Okay. And just for your information, in 2020 to 2021, China hoarded 50% of the world grains. Okay. So right now we are seeing escalation in agriculture commodities. So that's why I think whatever China does is always something that is likely to happen in the future, not near future of about 6 months, but potentially in about a year and onwards.
Yeah.
So this is something that we should take note on. Okay.
Mm.
So a bit on the geopolitics, the BRICS meeting. We expected more revelation on the path towards a new monetary system on the 27th February meeting, but it was extremely low-key. Okay, it was not reported in any mainstream media, but here are some interesting points. The Ministry of Finance of Russia and the Bank of Russia will work with BRICS partners to prepare a report by the end of the year for BRICS country leaders with a list of initiatives and recommendations on way to improve the international monetary and financial system. So this is like sticking it up to the IMF. Okay, we are taking over. Okay, the report is to be followed by a number of practical initiatives, which include the creation of a multilateral digital settlement and payment platform known as the BRICS Bridge. In fact, they tested this. If you have bought our book in 2023 and also our most recent
Yeah. The
5 year
two
book,
books. Yeah.
yeah,
The one Unlock Your Wealth Potential
yes,
on the screen here, and also the other one 2024 Astrology. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
PC.
I've talked about the Enbridge, which they already tested, okay, with several countries. Now, interestingly, it was tested between UAE, uh, Hong Kong, and Thailand. And Thailand right now is requesting to join BRICS. Okay. So it will help to bridge the gap between the financial markets of BRICS member countries and increase mutual trade. So that means that they are looking at a multilateral digital settlement and payment platform. Now, just last year, early last year, Russia actually had tokenized gold as a digital currency. So all these are actually falling into pieces. And the M bridge has been proven to be successful because they handled millions of dollars of transaction. So right now they are migrating to the BRICS bridge. So an interesting development. And because Evelyn says that the charts show that there's going to be a lot of conflict, war and such. So I try to put in some input from what I can gather around the news. So the terrorist attack in Moscow will expand the war in Ukraine. Right now, Russia is already um, targeting Kiev infrastructure. So meanwhile, Lloyd Austin, the Secretary for Defense, commented that NATO cannot allow Russia to win. Now, this gives hint that NATO could intervene or could imply the application of WMDs in the war theater. Because if NATO cannot intervene into the war because a lot of their armor has already been used out by supporting Ukraine, that could mean the application of WMDs in the war theater, and that could be a very disastrous uh, signs of escalation. So Yemen has already granted safe passage through the Red Sea for all Russian and Chinese ships. Recently, a flotilla of Russian warships just entered the Red Sea and put them within striking distance with the US Navy. Hopefully, there won't be any confrontation between the two. And escalation tension in the South China Sea, Indo-Pacific Command Chief Admiral Aquilino said that the Philippines could invoke the MDT or Mutual Defense Treaty if any confrontation with China results in the death of a soldier or sailor. So you can see that the narratives are being drawn. Okay, and when narratives are drawn, that means that, especially from the US, it often indicates of an event horizon that could possibly happen. Okay, just like the Moscow terrorist attack 2 days before, the US warned all its citizens not to visit any uh, places of mass uh, places that involve a mass crowd, okay, whether it's in theater, concert halls, and all those concert halls, okay, it was specifically mentioned. So right now, when they talk about all this, I worry that there could be a red flag, okay, and because sometimes if you look at the history of the Western nations, it is often in the darkest or depressed of economic situation that it always lead to war. Okay, so that is something that we need to uh, keep an eye on. So Middle East will be a major powder keg. The building of a temporary port in Gaza is just a ruse to put troops in Gaza. So the objective could be to secure Israel with US troops while we expand its operations in Lebanon and Rafah, Egypt. Now, this is just my opinion because that's, you know, it's so easy to if they want to be human, to provide humanitarian aid, just stop the war, okay? And then say we allow all the humanitarian groups to move in and rebuild. But no, okay, it's a military port and it's going to be militarized. So the other thing is oil. Russia will gradually cut its oil output to 9 million barrels of oil per day by June, and this could have impact on the price of oil as the cut materializes in the coming months. An increase in the price of oil could have wide ramifications across the global economy as inflation could make a vengeful return. So, summary, Evelyn?
Yeah, okay. So before we go into summary, okay, let me just share my screen. Okay. Yeah, let me share screen here. Yeah. Okay, so I think thanks, PC, for your detailed explanation. I think most of it we already predicted in both our books. I already dropped in the free chapter of those that have not seen the book before. The one on astrology and global trends is just available in soft copy. The one on unlock your wealth potential is available in the bookshop, in either in MPH or in popular bookshops. They are all available for sales there. And most of the things that we say, the narrative, I think is start to unfold here as well. And there will could also be major currency changes also, judging from, from this year, from right now till this part that we see at the global trends as PC has presented just now. So if you find that, today our talk is very interesting and you would like to join us, you are welcome to join us as a member, where as memberships will offer access to the annual talks um at actually it's valued at 68 ringgit. We just finish our annual talks for the whole year, the theme of the year itself. Okay, astrology and global trends by both me and PC, and then complimentary ebook. You will get this ebook for free. Then, if you miss today's live session, you will have early access, like within 3 days or normally it's within 1 to 2 days. We will, put it up for our members to view already. You can also go to our YouTube channel, but it will be 2 weeks later. And we will have, private Telegram channel access for discussion and insights, and also monthly update. Monthly date, which is related to your intuition. I will put in dates, time, and also direction where you can manifest to enhance your investment intuition um, for every month, where you can use all this very powerful date now, because some people they know how to manifest, but the dates I put in is very powerful with special structure. You only need to do once rather than to do 3 or 4 times. Okay, because they are in that powerful vortex of energy that can help you to align your frequency to manifest for what you want. So this is our talks that just now you have seen. Our membership is actually, it was 188, but since it's already the quarter is almost past, we have already reduced it to 148, and this will be our last sales already. After that, we will close the membership. We will not sell it until 2025 for a new whole year's membership. Okay, so you can get the membership actually from the form. I think PC has already put in the form there if you are interested, or you can DM to us to inquire more if you are interested. Okay, so the 148 actually is from April, from this April. You will get early access until end of the year for the December forecast. Okay, yeah, let's go through the summary. The summary is that the potential April itself is going to be a very challenging month already. Okay, emotion, self-punishment, and also the clash itself with the day pillar and the dog, earth and earth clash, and it could be a month of natural disasters, could be related to earth, and there are potentially big market movement as well. So over to you, PC.
Yeah, so obviously we are entering into a period of geopolitical tension and increased military confrontations. A major escalation in the war in Ukraine or a spark of a new one could cause investors to take a risk-off position. Economic, financial, and technology war will also feature strongly. Uh, right now, we often refer this as hybrid wars. Inflation could worsen due to rising raw materials and logistic costs. Commodities are moving up. Copper has moved up. Gold has moved up. Normally, when gold moves up, it is like, it's like a detector. Okay. So when gold detects something, it often goes up. Okay. So that is when you will know that there are some risks ahead. So commodities could perform well due to flow of funds into safe haven assets and hard and tangible assets. So that is why I think there will be a broader commodities movement as the financialized economy sees some huge profit taking.
Mm,
But nevertheless, I think technology will still be everyone's favorite, but there will be bouts of profit taking, so it can be very challenging. And of course, if let's say you are already invested in technology, I think it may be prudent to take some profit off the table
mm,
because of the underlying risk. Because if just a spark of a major war, let's say that there's a military conflict between China and Philippines, without even the US getting involved, I think there will be a huge risk-off market situation. Okay, or when uh, Israel expand its campaign into Lebanon, okay, and we can also see another risk-off event. Then, of course, I think there is a lot of potential for similar events in Europe because of the Russian-Ukraine war. So that is why I need to be careful a bit. Yeah.